The night shift at the Global Space Observation Network was usually quiet. Most operators spent their time watching endless streams of data from deep space, searching for any signs of intelligent life among the stars. But tonight was different. Dr. James Miller sat up straight in his chair, his coffee forgotten as he stared at the pattern emerging on his screen. At first, he thought it was just another burst of cosmic radiation, the kind they picked up dozens of times each day. But this was different. The pattern repeated itself with perfect precision, too perfect to be natural. "Tom, can you come look at this?" He called to his assistant. Tom walked over, yawning, but his sleepiness vanished as soon as he saw the screen. "Those can't be natural signals," Tom whispered, leaning closer to the monitor. "They're not," James replied, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "They're encrypted. Military-grade encryption, if I had to guess, but unlike anything we've ever seen before." The pattern continued to stream across their screens, a dance of light and data that shouldn't exist. James connected their most powerful computers to the feed, running every decryption algorithm they had. Hours passed, and more staff gathered around their station, watching in silent anticipation. Just before dawn, their main computer beeped. It had cracked a small portion of the signal. It's a star map," James said, his voice barely above a whisper. The room fell completely silent. "But not like our maps. This one shows thousands of inhabited systems. And Earth is marked." The marking wasn't friendly. Even with their limited understanding of the alien language, they could tell that much. Earth had been tagged with what appeared to be military coordinates and approach vectors. Within an hour, the facility was swarming with government officials. The president's science advisor arrived by helicopter, followed by military intelligence experts. They'd brought more powerful computers, better decryption tools, and a growing sense of urgency. By midday, they had decoded enough to understand the gravity of their situation. The signals weren't just random military communications. They were invasion plans. A vast empire, spanning thousands of star systems, had set its sights on Earth. "Look at these numbers," James explained to the gathered officials, pointing to a series of decoded transmissions. "They're discussing fleet movements, 300 ships minimum. And these energy readings, each one of those ships could probably level a continent." The military advisors exchanged worried glances. Humanity's most powerful weapons would be like firecrackers compared to what these aliens possessed. Or so they thought. "But there's something else," James continued, pulling up another decoded segment. "They think we're primitive. Their intel is incomplete. They know we have nuclear weapons, but they don't know about Project Guardian, or the quantum defense grid, or the AI defense systems." A slight smile crossed the face of General Roberts, who had been silent until now. "Then we have an advantage," he said. "They're expecting to find a helpless primitive species. Instead, they'll find a planet that has spent its entire existence preparing for war." "Should we begin evacuation protocols?" someone asked. "No," the general replied firmly. "That would give away our true capabilities. For now, we maintain normal operations, but we need to send them a message, something that will make them think twice about attacking Earth." James looked at the star map again, at the vast empire that thought Earth would be an easy conquest. They had no idea that humanity's greatest weakness, its constant state of war, had also become its greatest strength. "Then let's show them exactly who they're dealing with," James said, beginning to type. "Let's show them why picking a fight with humanity might be the last mistake their empire ever makes." The warning they would send would be simple but clear. Humanity had spent millennia perfecting the art of war, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And now those skills would serve a greater purpose, keeping Earth free from alien domination. As the sun set on that historic day, humanity prepared its response to the Empire's plans. The stars no longer seemed peaceful and inviting. They had become a battlefield, and Earth was ready for war. Admiral Reed stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Vanguard, watching as his fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 300 warships, each capable of destroying a small moon, spread out in perfect formation. To him, this was a modest force, merely standard protocol for adding another primitive world to the Empire's vast collection. "Status report," he commanded, his voice echoing across the silent bridge. "All ships present and accounted for, Admiral," his first officer responded. "We're detecting 9 planets, with the target world being the 3rd from the star. Initial scans confirm previous intelligence, no energy shields, no faster-than-light capabilities, and primitive weapon systems." Reed nodded, studying the holographic display of Earth that floated before him. It was a beautiful planet, mostly blue with swirls of white clouds and green-brown continents. Perfect for colonization, once the natives were properly subdued. "What about their defensive capabilities?" he asked, more out of routine than actual concern. "Primitive nuclear weapons, sir. Approximately 13,000 of them." The first officer paused. Though that number seems unusually high for a species at their development stage. Reed raised an eyebrow. Most civilizations develop perhaps a few hundred nuclear weapons before discovering cleaner energy sources. 13,000 was excessive. "Continue the scan," he ordered. "What else?" "They have an unusual number of satellites, sir. Our initial count shows over 5,000 in orbit. Most appear to be for communication and observation." "But," the officer trailed off, frowning at his display. "But what?" "We can't determine the purpose of many of them. They're broadcasting civilian signals, but their construction suggests military applications. It's unusual." Reed walked closer to the holographic display, zooming in on Earth's orbital space. The number of satellites was indeed striking. They formed a complex web around the planet. Most primitive species had perhaps a few hundred satellites at most. This was something different. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're detecting some sort of energy grid linking many of these satellites. It's very faint, almost undetectable. We can't identify the technology." For the first time, Reed felt a slight twinge of unease. In his 300 years of serving the Empire, he had overseen the integration of dozens of worlds. None had shown this level of planetary defense preparation, while still being so technologically primitive. "Launch a probe," he ordered. "Let's get a closer look at these satellites." The probe never made it halfway to Earth. It simply disappeared, leaving no trace, no debris, and no energy signature. The bridge crew stared at their screens in confusion. "Launch another probe," Reed commanded, his voice harder now. "Full shields this time." The second probe vanished just like the first. Reed stood silent for a long moment, studying the planet below. Something wasn't right. The intelligence reports had described Earth as a primitive world, barely capable of spaceflight. Yet here they were, with defenses that could silently eliminate Imperial probes without leaving a trace. "Sir," his first officer spoke up, "we're detecting something else. The humans have some sort of vast underground network, bunkers, tunnels, and what appear to be weapon silos, spanning their entire planet. The network appears to be thousands of years old, continuously expanded and modernized." "Thousands of years of military preparation," Reed muttered. "What kind of species spends its entire history preparing for war?" "Admiral," another officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, using our own military codes." Reed's eyes narrowed. The use of Imperial military codes should have been impossible for a primitive species. "Put it through," he ordered. As the message began to play, Reed realized that perhaps the Empire's intelligence on Earth had been dangerously incomplete. These humans weren't primitive, they were something else entirely. Something that had masked its true capabilities behind a facade of technological limitations. And now, they were about to deliver their warning. Director Thomas Ward stood in the United Earth Defense Council's main chamber, surrounded by screens showing military leaders from every nation. The room was silent as they watched the Imperial fleet's position at the edge of their solar system. 300 warships, each powerful enough to turn cities into ash, waited there like wolves eyeing their prey. But Earth wasn't prey. Not anymore. "The vote is unanimous," Thomas announced, his voice steady. "We proceed with Protocol Omega." On screens around the world, military commanders nodded their agreement. This was the moment they had prepared for across generations. Every war, every conflict, every arms race had led to this, humanity's ultimate test. "Dr. Miller," Thomas called out to the scientist who had first detected the Empire's approach. "Begin the transmission." James Miller sat at his console, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The message they were about to send had been drafted decades ago, revised countless times, and prepared for this exact moment. It would be humanity's first and only warning to any alien empire that thought Earth would be an easy conquest. "Broadcasting now," James announced, using their own military frequencies. The message was simple, transmitted in both Earth's languages and the Empire's own military codes. "To the approaching Imperial fleet. We, the people of Earth, have observed your approach. We understand your intentions. Before you proceed, we offer this single warning. We are not the primitive species you believe us to be. We are humanity. For 10,000 years, we have done one thing better than any other species in existence. We have fought wars. We have killed each other with sticks and stones. We have unleashed plagues and poisons. We have split atoms to create weapons that can destroy continents. We have turned our most brilliant scientific discoveries into tools of destruction. We have fought in deserts, in jungles, in frozen wastelands. We have fought in our oceans, in our skies, and now in space. We have created weapons you cannot detect and defenses you cannot penetrate. You see our nuclear weapons. There are thousands more you haven't found. You see our satellites. Each one can transform into a weapon. You see our cities. Under each one lies a fortress. We do not want war. We have seen enough death in our history to last 1,000 lifetimes. But if you force this conflict, understand one truth. We will not be conquered. We are sending you our history, not the peaceful achievements we're proud of, but the wars we're ashamed of. Study it carefully. Learn why every empire that ever tried to rule humanity eventually fell. You have one Earth day to withdraw your fleet. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. Choose wisely." As the message transmitted, James activated the second part of Protocol Omega. Every military satellite in Earth's orbit powered up, their civilian disguises dropping away to reveal weapon systems that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. Deep underground, fusion reactors spun to life, powering defense systems that had never been tested in actual combat. On screens across the chamber, lights began blinking as humanity's true military capability revealed itself. Quantum entanglement fields stretched between satellites, creating an invisible web that could tear ships apart at the atomic level. Gravitational pulse weapons, disguised as weather monitoring stations, aligned themselves with the Imperial fleet. "Message transmitted," James reported. "They're receiving our military history files now." Thomas watched the data stream flow across his screen. Every war, every battle, every weapon humanity had ever created. The Empire would see humanity not as they wished to be, but as they had been forced to become. Masters of warfare, experts in destruction, survivors who had turned their greatest flaw into their strongest defense. "Now we wait," Thomas said, his eyes fixed on the Imperial fleet. "Let's see if they're wise enough to listen." The fate of Earth hung in the balance, waiting for the Empire's response to humanity's warning. But for the first time in history, all of humanity stood united, ready to show the galaxy why Earth had never been conquered and never would be. Admiral Reed stood on his bridge, watching the last of Earth's historical war footage play across his screens. His officers remained silent, their faces pale as they processed what they had just witnessed. Thousands of years of constant warfare, each conflict driving innovations in ways to destroy, defend, and survive. "They can't be serious," his first officer finally said. "No species could survive that much warfare." "Send the striker," Reed commanded, his voice hard. "Show them what real power looks like." The striker was the fleet's most advanced destroyer, a ship that could reduce entire cities to ash. Its captain, a decorated veteran of 100 conquests, moved his vessel forward with confidence. After all, how could these humans possibly threaten a ship that could withstand direct hits from planetary defense systems? In the United Earth Defense Council chamber, Director Thomas Ward watched the destroyer's approach on his main screen. "They're testing us," he said quietly, "just as we predicted they would." He turned to Dr. Miller. "Activate grid section 7. James nodded, his fingers dancing across his console. In space, nothing visible changed. The destroyer continued its approach, its sensors detecting nothing unusual. No energy signatures, no weapon locks, no signs of defensive measures. Then it happened. One moment, the striker was there, moving confidently toward Earth. The next moment, it simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, no distress signal. The ship and its entire crew vanished as if they had never been there at all. On the Imperial flagship's bridge, alarms blared as officers scrambled to understand what they had just witnessed. "Report," Reed demanded. "Unknown weapon system." "Sir," his science officer responded, voice shaking. "We detected a brief surge in quantum fields, then nothing." The striker didn't just die, it was completely removed from existence. Reed stared at his screens, watching the replay of the striker's final moments. "How?" he whispered. Back on Earth, James explained to the Council what had just happened. The quantum entanglement grid worked perfectly. When their ship crossed the threshold, the grid activated. Every atom of their vessel was instantly entangled with its antimatter counterpart in a parallel dimension we created specifically for this purpose. In simple terms, Thomas asked. "We didn't destroy their ship," James explained. "We made it so it never existed in the first place. The ultimate deterrent, a weapon that doesn't just kill, but removes all trace that its target ever was." On screens around the chamber, military leaders nodded in approval. The weapon had been expensive, consuming resources that could have rebuilt entire nations, but it had served its purpose, showing the Empire that humanity's warnings weren't empty threats. In space, the Imperial fleet's formation shifted. Ships moved back, creating distance between themselves and the invisible web of quantum death that surrounded Earth. "Their sensors are going crazy," James reported, watching the Imperial fleet's reactions. "They're trying to map our defenses, but they can't. The quantum grid exists in multiple dimensions at once. To their instruments, it's like trying to measure a shadow with a ruler." Thomas stood, watching the Imperial ships retreat to a safer distance. "And that was just one of our defensive systems," he said. "One of our simpler ones, at that." "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Imperial flagship. They're requesting clarification about our defensive capabilities." Thomas smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Tell them nothing," he ordered. "Let them wonder what else we have waiting for them. Let them consider how a species that spent millennia perfecting the art of war might defend its homeworld." The Empire had come expecting to find a primitive species ready for conquest. Instead, they had found humanity, a species that had turned its violent past into the ultimate defense, ready to demonstrate that sometimes the most dangerous civilizations are the ones that learn to hide their true power. The real question now was, would the Empire be wise enough to retreat or foolish enough to test humanity's defenses again? Admiral Reed sat alone in his command room, surrounded by holographic displays showing everything his fleet had learned about Earth. The loss of the striker had shaken him deeply, but what truly disturbed him was what his analysis teams had discovered in the hours since. "Play the findings again," he commanded. The ship's AI began its report. Earth's defensive capabilities appear to be layered in ways we've never encountered. Each visible defense system appears to hide 3 or 4 others. Their satellite network isn't just a weapon. It's a decoy to hide even more powerful systems beneath it. Reed watched as the holographic display showed their latest scans of Earth's defenses. Continue. Their underground bunker network is far more extensive than initially believed. Preliminary scans suggest they've been building it for over 5,000 years, with each generation adding new levels and technologies. Some chambers are so deep our scans can't reach them. The Admiral stood up and walked to the window, staring at the blue planet that had just destroyed his most powerful destroyer. What about their technology level? That's the most concerning part, sir. They appear to have deliberately hidden their true technological capabilities. What we thought were primitive nuclear weapons are actually advanced fusion devices. Their simple communication satellites contain quantum technology we don't fully understand. Even their civilian infrastructure appears designed for rapid conversion to military use. On his personal screen, Reed watched footage from Earth's military history. Unlike the Empire, which had grown through peaceful expansion and only occasional military action, humans had been fighting continuously for their entire history. They hadn't just practiced war. They had mastered it in ways the Empire had never considered. "Sir," his first officer's voice came through the intercom. "The analysis team has discovered something else. It appears the humans have been expecting us, or someone like us, for centuries." "Explain," Reed demanded. "Their entire civilization is structured for defense. Their nations compete with each other, but all their wars have pushed their technology forward. Their space program, their internet, even their medical advances, all came from military research. They've turned their entire planet into a fortress, hiding their most advanced weapons in plain sight." Reed remembered the striker's final moments. 1 second it was there, the next, erased from existence. What other weapons did the humans have hidden away? What other surprises waited for any force foolish enough to attack them? In the Empire's military academy, Reed had learned about different types of civilizations. There were the peaceful ones, easy to conquer. There were the warriors, who fought hard but fell to superior technology. But humans were something else entirely. "Display their message again," he ordered. The humans' warning played once more. "We have spent our entire history fighting ourselves. We've become very, very good at war." Now he understood. While the Empire had been building a civilization, humanity had been preparing for this very moment. Every war, every battle, every conflict had taught them something new about defense and destruction. They hadn't wasted time building grand cities or massive monuments. Instead, they had turned their entire planet into a weapon. "Sir," his science officer reported, "we've detected energy signatures suggesting they have weapons platforms hidden in their asteroid belt. The humans have extended their defenses far beyond their planet." Reed nodded slowly. The Empire had thought Earth would be an easy conquest, a primitive world to add to their collection. Instead, they had found something unprecedented, a species that had spent its entire existence preparing for this moment, a civilization that had turned its greatest weakness into its ultimate strength. "One more thing," Admiral, the AI added. "Based on their technological progression rate and their history of weapons development, our algorithms suggest they're only showing us a fraction of their true capabilities. The quantum weapon that destroyed the Striker, our analysis suggests it may be one of their simpler defense systems." Reed felt a chill run down his spine. The Empire had made a grave mistake in targeting Earth. Now he had to decide how to handle a situation no Imperial commander had ever faced. A primitive world that wasn't primitive at all, but rather a military superpower hiding behind a mask of technological inferiority. Admiral Reed called his senior staff to the flagship's main conference room. The holographic displays around them showed Earth rotating slowly, each scan revealing new layers of defenses they hadn't noticed before. The room was silent as the officers studied the reports of their day-long observation. "We have 3 options," Reed began, his voice echoing in the quiet room. First, we can retreat and face the Empire's disappointment. Second, we can call for reinforcements and attempt a full-scale invasion. Third, we can try a new approach. His weapons officer spoke first. Sir, even if we brought the entire Imperial fleet, we couldn't guarantee victory. These humans, they don't fight like any species we've encountered. Explain, Reed commanded, though he already knew the answer. Most species develop weapons to win wars, the officer said. Humans develop weapons to make sure no one dares to start a war with them. Every defense we detect seems designed not just to stop an attack, but to make the cost of attacking so high that no one would risk it. The science officer nodded in agreement. Their quantum weapon wasn't just meant to destroy the striker. It was meant to show us they could make any of our ships simply cease to exist. It's psychological warfare at a level we've never seen. Reed walked to the window, watching Earth's oceans shimmer in the sunlight. What about orbital bombardment? Standard Imperial protocol for resistant worlds. His tactical officer shook her head. Sir, their underground networks are too deep and too well protected. We could burn their surface to glass, and they'd survive. Worse, they've probably prepared for that scenario and have countermeasures we haven't detected yet. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. The Empire had conquered thousands of worlds, but they had never encountered a species that had spent its entire history preparing for this exact moment. There's something else to consider, the intelligence officer added. Their message wasn't just a warning. It was an invitation. Explain, Reed said, turning from the window. They said they excel at war because they hate it. They offered peaceful cooperation as an alternative. No species we've encountered has ever done that. Offered alliance while simultaneously demonstrating they could destroy us. On the main screen, new data scrolled past. Analysis of Earth's non-military achievements, art, music, literature, scientific discoveries that had nothing to do with war. A civilization that created beauty even while preparing for ultimate destruction. Sir, the first officer spoke up, the Empire's protocol requires us to subdue resistance with overwhelming force. But we've never faced a situation where overwhelming force might not be enough. Reed nodded slowly. In 300 years of service, he had never retreated from a target world. But he had also never encountered a species that could erase his most powerful warship from existence as a mere demonstration. What's the status of their defenses now? He asked. Still at minimum alert, the tactical officer reported. They haven't even fully activated their orbital grid. Sir, I think they're showing remarkable restraint. Any other species would have attacked us by now. Reed looked at each of his officers in turn. The Empire had sent them to conquer a primitive world, but instead they had found something unprecedented. A species that had mastered both the art of war and the art of peace, capable of erasing ships from existence, yet willing to talk before fighting. The Empire's disappointment is preferable to its destruction, Reed said finally. But before we leave, I want to send them one last message. It's time the Empire learned something that these humans figured out long ago. Sir, his communications officer asked. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from winning a war, Reed said, but from being so well prepared that no one dares to start one. The decision had been made. Now they just had to hope the Empire would understand why one of its most decorated admirals chose to retreat from what had appeared to be a primitive world. In the United Earth Defense Council chamber, Director Thomas Ward watched as the Imperial fleet began to move. Every screen showed the massive warships changing position, their engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. Are they retreating? Someone asked. Not yet, James Miller replied, studying his readings. They're sending another transmission. The message from Admiral Reed appeared on their main screen. To the people of Earth, in 300 years of serving the Empire, I have overseen the integration of dozens of worlds. None have shown your level of preparation, innovation, or restraint. You could have destroyed more of our ships. You chose not to. That tells us as much about your civilization as your weapons do. Thomas leaned forward, reading between the lines. The Empire was looking for a way to retreat without losing face. They're offering us a chance to help them save their pride, he said quietly. James, prepare our response. On the Imperial flagship, Reed waited. His fleet was ready to jump to hyperspace, but protocol demanded they receive a final response. When it came, it was typically human, both a warning and an offer of friendship wrapped into one. To Admiral Reed and the Imperial fleet, we appreciate your wisdom in understanding our position. As we stated before, we are not interested in war. We excel at it because we hate it. Our history has taught us that peace must be protected with strength, but strength need not always lead to violence. Should the Empire wish to establish diplomatic relations, we would welcome peaceful contact. Our achievements in art, science, and culture match our military capabilities. We would gladly share knowledge and culture with those who come in friendship. But should anyone return with conquest in mind, they will find that what we demonstrated today was merely a fraction of our defensive capabilities. Earth is not, and never will be, a prize to be taken. The choice, as always, will be yours. Reed allowed himself a small smile. In this message, he heard everything he needed to know about humanity. They were warriors who wanted peace, builders who prepared for destruction, a species that had somehow turned its violent past into a foundation for a worthy future. Send our final response, he ordered. Then prepare for departure. Back on Earth, the Council received the Empire's last message. Your terms are acceptable. We will recommend to the Empire that Earth be reclassified as a Class X civilization. Too advanced and too costly to subdue. Expect diplomatic contact within 1 standard year. May your weapons remain unused. The Imperial fleet's engines flared bright blue, and in a flash of light, they'd vanished into hyperspace. Earth had faced its first contact with a galactic civilization and emerged not just intact, but respected. In the council chamber, celebrations began to break out, but Thomas raised his hand for silence. This isn't over, he said. The Empire will return, perhaps not as enemies, but they'll return. And others will come too, now that they know we're here. Are you worried? James asked. Thomas looked at the screen showing Earth's defenses returning to their dormant state, hiding once again beneath their peaceful disguises. No, he said. For the first time in human history, our capacity for war has brought peace instead of destruction. We've shown the galaxy that Earth is not to be trifled with, while also offering friendship to those who respect us. And the defensive grid? Someone asked. Keep building, Thomas ordered. Keep innovating. Keep preparing. Because now the galaxy knows we're here, and the best way to maintain peace is to make sure everyone knows exactly how costly it would be to break it. As the council chamber emptied, Thomas stayed behind, watching the stars through the reinforced windows. Humanity had passed its first galactic test. They had faced down an empire without firing a shot, using the mere threat of their defensive capabilities to ensure peace. In the end, humanity's greatest weakness, its constant preparation for war, had become its greatest strength. They had learned to fight so well that they didn't have to fight at all. And in doing so, they had earned something far more valuable than victory in battle. They had earned respect among the stars. The Empire's warships were gone, but Earth's defenses remained vigilant, ready, as they had always been, to protect humanity's freedom to choose its own path among the stars.